high in the misty mountains, where the wind whispered through ancient pines and the rivers sang eternal songs. There stood a modest monastery. Within its walls lived a wise monk, known far and wide for his boundless kindness and deep wisdom. Seekers from all corners of the land traveled great distances to sit at his feet, hoping to receive guidance on the struggles of life. The monk never turned anyone away, whether it was a weary traveler seeking shelter, a heartbroken soul searching for solace, or a restless mind craving answers. He greeted each with the same gentle smile. He listened patiently, offering counsel, comfort, and wisdom. He gave freely, believing that compassion was the highest virtue. Yet, as the years passed, something troubling began to unfold. At first, the visitors were grateful, humbled by his generosity, but over time, their attitudes shifted. They stopped coming for wisdom and started coming for solutions. They no longer sought to understand their own problems but expected him to fix everything for them. If he provided an answer, they returned with more demands. If he hesitated, they grew impatient. Some even resented him when he could not meet their ever-growing expectations. Why had his kindness become a burden? The monk, puzzled by this change, withdrew into deep meditation one evening. As he sat beneath the great Bodhi tree, his mind drifted into silence, and a question echoed in his heart. Why does giving too much often lead to being taken for granted? Why does patience, instead of earning respect, sometimes invite disrespect? In the stillness of his contemplation, a vision appeared before him. He saw 4 great doors, each standing tall and imposing. As he approached, he sensed a profound truth hidden behind them. Each door represented a mistake that kind-hearted people often make, mistakes that turn generosity into weakness, compassion into obligation, and patience into silent suffering. Beyond these doors lay the lessons of balance, teachings that revealed when to give and when to hold back, when to forgive and when to walk away, when to be patient and when to demand respect. The monk understood then that kindness, without wisdom, can lead to exhaustion, that giving, without limits, invites exploitation, and that even the purest heart must learn the art of self-respect to truly honor the virtue of compassion. And so, he decided that he must share what he had learned, not only with his visitors, but with all who were willing to listen. Now, let me share with you the story of the 4 doors and the wisdom hidden within them. The first door, unquestioning forgiveness. A young man arrived at the monastery, his steps heavy with sorrow. His face, once full of light, was now shadowed with disappointment. He bowed before the monk, his voice trembling as he spoke. "Master, I have been betrayed." The monk observed him in silence, waiting for him to continue. "It was my closest friend," the young man said. "He deceived me, broke my trust, and caused me great pain. But I forgave him. I believed that kindness would change him, that my forgiveness would make him reflect on his actions." He lowered his gaze. Yet he did it again, and again. Each time, I forgave him, hoping that my compassion would soften his heart. But instead of changing, he treated me worse. "Why, Master, why does my kindness seem to make him crueler?" The monk nodded gently and stood. Without a word, he motioned for the young man to follow him. They walked together through the monastery grounds, past the meditation hall and the tranquil gardens, until they reached an ancient wooden door, worn by time. The monk pushed it open, revealing a vast, endless desert. "Step inside," the monk instructed. The young man hesitated but obeyed. As he entered, the heat of the sun pressed against his skin. The ground beneath him was dry and cracked. Yet in the distance, there was a well, deep and filled with crystal-clear water. At first, the sight of water in such an arid place seemed like a miracle. But as he watched, he noticed something strange. People arrived at the well in great numbers, drinking eagerly, their thirst overwhelming their manners. Yet, as they drank, they carelessly kicked sand into the well. Some wiped the dust from their faces and let it fall into the water. Others dug their feet into the dry earth, sending more grains tumbling into the depths. The young man frowned. The water remained clean for a while, but with each careless act, the well became murkier. Eventually, it filled with dirt, and the water vanished beneath the sand. When the well could no longer provide, the people did not stop to reflect on what they had done. They simply left, searching for another source, abandoning what was once a life-giving fountain. "Do you understand?" the monk asked, his voice calm. The young man shook his head, still staring at the well. The monk placed a hand on his shoulder. "A well that allows itself to be filled with dirt will soon run dry. And when it is empty, those who once depended on it will leave without hesitation." The young man's heart ached at the truth of these words. "Your forgiveness," the monk continued, "is like the water in this well, a life-giving force, a beautiful gift, but when given without care, without awareness, it becomes a resource that others take for granted. They drink from it, never thinking of the well itself, only their own thirst, and if the well does not protect itself, if it allows itself to be filled with dirt, it will soon hold nothing but emptiness." The young man clenched his fists. "But, Master, isn't forgiveness a virtue? Shouldn't we forgive endlessly?" The monk smiled. "Forgiveness is indeed noble, but when given without wisdom, it invites disrespect. When you forgive without consequence, you teach others that they can harm you without cost. A man who is forgiven over and over without ever facing the weight of his actions does not learn kindness. He learns that he can do as he pleases and suffer no loss." The young man felt the weight of these words settle deep within him. "Does that mean I should never forgive?" he asked. "No," the monk said. "Forgiveness is a gift, but it must be given with awareness. True forgiveness is not blind. It is mindful. It comes with boundaries. It does not mean allowing the same harm to repeat itself. It does not mean letting your heart become a well that is drained and abandoned." He gestured toward the desert. "Tell me, do you think the well should have done nothing?" The young man shook his head. "No, it should have protected its water." "Exactly," the monk said. "A wise man forgives, but he does not allow himself to be harmed again and again. Forgiveness is not about letting others walk over you. It is about freeing your heart from hatred without allowing more harm to enter." He paused, letting the words settle before offering one final thought. To forgive does not mean to return to the same place of pain. Sometimes, the greatest act of forgiveness is to walk away, not in anger, but in wisdom, to say, "I release you from my heart, but I will not allow you to hurt me again." This is not cruelty, this is self-respect. The young man closed his eyes. For the first time, he understood. Forgiveness should not be a door that allows endless harm to pass through. It should be a gate that allows peace to enter, but only if it does not bring more suffering. As they stepped back from the door, the desert faded, and the young man felt a quiet strength rise within him. "Thank you, Master," he said. "I now see that true forgiveness is not an invitation for repeated pain. It is an act of wisdom, one that protects both the heart and the soul." The monk smiled. "Then you have learned the lesson of the first door. Forgiveness should be an act of strength, not an invitation for repeated harm. Forgiving someone does not mean allowing them to continue hurting you. It means letting go of anger while also protecting yourself. A wise person forgives with awareness, with boundaries, and with the courage to walk away when necessary." The second door, overgiving without boundaries. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light upon the monastery, a weary woman arrived. Her shoulders slumped under the weight of unseen burdens, and her eyes, though kind, carried the exhaustion of someone who had long given more than she received. She bowed deeply before the monk and spoke, her voice trembling. "Master, I give and give," she said. "I help everyone who comes to me. I offer my time, my energy, my love, but now, they expect more. If I do not give, They call me selfish. If I set a boundary, they accuse me of being unkind. Why do they not appreciate my efforts?" The monk studied her for a moment, his eyes filled with understanding. He had seen many souls like hers, hearts full of generosity, yet burdened by the weight of their own kindness. He motioned for her to follow. They walked through the monastery's quiet halls until they reached an ancient wooden door, carved with intricate patterns of flowing rivers and blooming trees. The monk pushed it open, revealing a scene that was unlike anything the woman had ever witnessed. She stepped through the door and found herself in a grand banquet hall. The ceilings were high, the walls adorned with golden lanterns that flickered in the dim light. The hall stretched endlessly, lined with long tables overflowing with food, steaming bowls of rice, fragrant curries, fresh fruits, and bread so soft it melted at the touch. The air was thick with the scent of spices and the murmurs of contentment. Yet something was strange. At the center of the hall stood a single cook, his hands moving tirelessly as he prepared dish after dish. He never rested, sweat dripped down his brow as he chopped, stirred, and served without pause. People feasted at the tables, their plates never empty for long, but as soon as they finished a meal, they did not thank him. They did not pause to acknowledge his effort. They simply held out their plates, demanding more. The cook's hands trembled from exhaustion, but no one noticed. They only saw their empty plates, never the one who filled them. The woman's chest tightened as she watched. "You are like this cook," the monk said softly. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. She understood. She had spent her life like this cook, endlessly providing, endlessly giving, yet rarely being seen. "Then should I stop giving?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The monk shook his head. "No," he said, "giving is a virtue, a beautiful thing, but a wise giver gives with boundaries. If you give endlessly, people will not see your kindness. They will only see what they are owed." He gestured toward the banquet hall. "These guests do not take more because they are cruel. They take more because they have learned to expect it. The cook, by giving without limits, has taught them that they can ask for more without gratitude. They do not see his exhaustion because he never stops. To them, his giving is not a kindness, it is simply the way things are." The woman wiped her tears. "But if I say no," she said, "won't they think I am selfish?" The monk smiled gently. "Perhaps, but tell me, is it selfish for the cook to rest so that he may continue to cook tomorrow? Or should he keep giving until he collapses, leaving the banquet hall empty forever?" The woman's lips parted in realization. "If he does not take care of himself, then one day, there will be nothing left to give," she murmured. "Exactly," the monk said. "A wise giver understands that their energy, their time, and their love are like a well. If they let it run dry, they can no longer help anyone, including themselves." The woman looked back at the banquet hall. Now, she noticed details she had overlooked before. The cook's hands, shaking with exhaustion, his eyes, dull with weariness, his body, leaning against the counter just to stay upright. She had been so focused on the endless demands of others that she had not realized how much she had been depleting herself. "How do I change this?" she asked. "By giving mindfully," the monk said, "by understanding that saying no does not make you unkind. It makes you sustainable. You must give in a way that allows you to keep giving, not endlessly, but wisely. Learn to say, I can help you, but not at the cost of myself. Give in a way that does not drain you, but nourishes both you and those around you." The woman took a deep breath. For the first time in years, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Thank you, Master," she said. "I now see that true generosity is not giving until I have nothing left. It is giving with wisdom, with care, and with balance." The monk smiled. "Then you have learned the lesson of the second door." As they stepped back, the banquet hall faded away. And the woman found herself once again standing in the quiet monastery. But something within her had changed. She no longer felt like an invisible giver. She felt like someone who could give without losing herself. Giving is noble, but without limits, it leads to exhaustion. When you give endlessly, people stop seeing your generosity. They only see what they are owed. A wise person knows when to say, enough. They understand that saying, no, does not make them selfish. It makes them strong. True generosity comes from a place of balance, not sacrifice. A well that never refills will one day run dry. A giver who never rests will one day disappear. Give wisely, and you will never have to stop giving. The third door, seeking approval from others. A young scholar arrived at the monastery, his heart heavy with doubt. His robes were fine, his posture upright, yet there was an unease in his eyes, a restlessness that no achievement had soothed. He bowed before the monk and spoke with frustration. Master, I work hard, I help others, I strive to be a good man, yet, no matter what I do, I am judged. If I succeed, they envy me. If I fail, they mock me. If I speak, they find fault with my words. If I remain silent, they say I have nothing to offer. Why can I never win their respect? The monk listened, his expression calm. Come with me, he said. The scholar followed as the monk led him through the monastery. They passed through a corridor lined with candles, their flames flickering with each movement of the air. The monk stopped before an ancient wooden door, its surface smooth from years of passing hands. Step inside, the monk said. The scholar obeyed. Inside, he found himself in a vast chamber, lined with 1,000 mirrors. Some were large, stretching from floor to ceiling. Others were small, no bigger than the palm of his hand. Each mirror reflected a different version of him. Some made him appear tall and imposing. Others short and weak. Some showed him wise, others foolish. In some, he was a great man, in others, he was nothing at all. He took a step forward, and the reflections shifted. He adjusted his stance, trying to find the perfect version of himself, one where he looked strong, confident, respected. But as soon as he changed his posture, the mirrors changed too. No matter what he did, he could not find one reflection that remained constant. Confused, he turned to the monk. What is this place? The monk's voice was steady. You are like this man, he said, gesturing to the shifting reflections. Each mirror represents the opinion of another person. Some will see you as wise, others as foolish. Some will praise you, others will criticize you, and if you seek to adjust yourself to please them, you will spend your whole life lost, shifting endlessly, never finding peace. The scholar's breath caught in his throat. But I only want to be respected, he said. I only want to be seen as good. The monk shook his head. Respect is not earned by chasing validation, he said. It is earned by standing firm in your truth. If you live for the approval of others, your life will be like these mirrors, constantly changing, never stable. The wind of opinion will toss you from one identity to another, and you will never truly know yourself. The scholar turned back to the mirrors. Now, he could see the truth of what the monk was saying. Even if he found the perfect reflection today, tomorrow someone new would come along with a different opinion, and he would be forced to change again. Then what should I do? He asked. The monk gestured toward the chamber's entrance. Step out of the mirrors, he said. The scholar hesitated. The mirrors had been his guide for so long. He had always measured himself by the way others saw him. What would he be without their judgment? But deep inside, he knew the answer. He took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the mirrors vanished. The chamber was gone, replaced by the quiet, steady air of the monastery. The monk placed a hand on the scholar's shoulder. True strength comes not from the praise of others, but from self-respect. Stop searching for approval outside yourself. Look inward. Ask yourself, not them. Am I living with integrity? Do I honor my own values? The scholar felt a weight lift from his chest. For the first time, he realized that he had been giving his power away to others, letting their shifting opinions dictate his worth. You are right, Master, he said. If I continue to seek validation, I will always be at the mercy of the wind. But if I trust in myself, I will stand firm like a mountain. The monk smiled. Then you have learned the lesson of the third door. The scholar bowed deeply. He no longer needed to see himself through the eyes of others. He understood now that peace does not come from being liked, it comes from being true to oneself. If your happiness depends on the approval of others, you will never be at peace. Each person sees you differently, and their opinions shift like the wind. Live for their approval, and you will always be lost. True respect is not given to those who beg for it, but to those who stand firm in their truth. Stop looking at the mirrors. Step out of them. Ask yourself, not the world, do I respect myself? If the answer is yes, then no criticism can shake you. The fourth door, tolerating disrespect. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight bathed the monastery in hues of gold, an elderly man arrived. His steps were slow, not just from age, but from a lifetime of quiet suffering. He bowed before the monk, his face lined with years of endurance. Master, he began, his voice filled with resignation, I have been patient all my life. I avoid conflict, I endure insults, and I let others speak over me. I have never raised my voice in anger, nor have I demanded my place. Yet, instead of respecting my peace, they treat me as if I am nothing. Why? The monk listened carefully, nodding with understanding. Then, without a word, he rose and motioned for the elder to follow. They walked in silence through the monastery's quiet halls until they reached an ancient wooden door. Its surface etched with carvings of fierce animals. The monk pushed it open, revealing a scene the elder had never imagined. Step inside, the monk instructed. The elder hesitated but obeyed. Inside, he found himself standing on the edge of a vast open plain, where the tall grass swayed in the wind. In the center of the field stood a mighty lion, its golden mane shining under the sun. The elder marveled at its strength, its quiet power. Yet something was strange. Small creatures, jackals, wild dogs, and crows, circled the lion. At first, they only nipped at its tail, testing its patience. The lion did nothing. Seeing no reaction, they grew bolder. The jackals bit at its legs, the birds plucked at its mane, and the wild dogs barked in its face. Yet still, the lion did nothing. At first, they had feared the lion, but as time passed, their fear turned into arrogance. They no longer saw a mighty beast. They saw something they could mock, something they could push, something that would never fight back. The elder gasped. Why does the lion allow this? He asked. The monk turned to him, his voice calm but firm. Because it believes that its patience is wisdom, he said. It tells itself that by ignoring the insults, it is choosing peace. But what has its silence earned it? Not respect, but contempt. Not admiration, but ridicule. The creatures no longer fear the lion, because they have forgotten its strength. The elder's heart ached. Are you saying that I should respond to disrespect with anger? He asked. The monk shook his head. No, he said, a lion does not need to roar at every insult, nor does it need to chase every jackal, but neither does it allow itself to be disrespected endlessly. There is a difference between patience and surrender. The elder lowered his gaze. I always thought patience was the highest virtue, he murmured, that if I endured, others would recognize my kindness and show me respect in return. The monk placed a gentle hand on the elder's shoulder. Patience is indeed a virtue, he said, but when it is mistaken for weakness, it invites abuse. Just as the small creatures tested the lion, People will test your boundaries. If you never push back, they will assume you have no strength. They will assume you are someone they can walk over, and eventually, they will no longer see you at all. The elder's hands trembled as he stared at the lion, still standing silently as the creatures nipped and tore at it. "Then what should I do?" he asked. The monk smiled. "You must remember that you are a lion. Not every battle needs to be fought, but a true lion knows when to stand its ground. There are moments when silence is wise, but there are also moments when you must show that you will not be disrespected." The elder exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. "I understand now," he said. "I thought my silence was dignity, but in truth, it has made me invisible. I thought my patience was strength, but it has only invited others to treat me as weak. From now on, I will be patient, but not at the cost of my self-respect." The monk nodded. "Then you have learned the lesson of the fourth door." As they stepped back into the monastery, the vision of the lion and the jackals faded, but the lesson remained. The elder no longer walked with the slow, burdened steps of someone who had endured too much. He walked with the quiet confidence of one who had remembered his own strength. Patience is a virtue, but tolerating disrespect is not wisdom, it is surrender. If you allow others to treat you as insignificant, they will come to believe that you are. A lion does not need to roar at every insult, but neither does it allow itself to be reduced to prey. There is a difference between being peaceful and being powerless. Respect is not given to those who endure everything in silence, it is given to those who know when to stand their ground. Do not let the world forget your strength. The four seekers stood before the monk, their hearts and minds transformed by the lessons of the four doors. The weight of their burdens had lifted, replaced by a newfound understanding. They no longer saw their struggles as mere misfortunes but as invitations to grow, to set boundaries, and to reclaim their own power. The monk looked at each of them in turn and spoke with the wisdom of one who had seen many souls lost in the same illusions. Forgiveness must be given with wisdom. Giving must have boundaries. Respect must come from within, not from others' approval. Patience must never be mistaken for submission. The seekers listened, their hearts absorbing each word. For years, they had carried their suffering, believing that their kindness, their generosity, and their patience would be enough to earn him respect and love. But now they understood, kindness without wisdom leads to exhaustion, giving without boundaries leads to exploitation. Seeking approval leads to self-doubt, and patience without limits leads to invisibility. As they left the monastery, they no longer walked as burdened souls. They walked with quiet strength, their backs straighter, their gazes clearer. They had not become unkind, they had simply learned to protect their kindness. And so, dear reader, what about you? How many times have you forgiven someone who never changed? How often have you given until you had nothing left? Have you ever exhausted yourself trying to gain approval from those who would never truly see you? Have you endured mistreatment in silence, hoping that one day your patience would be rewarded with respect? If you give these four things too freely, unquestioning forgiveness, overgiving, approval-seeking, and tolerance of disrespect, you will not be seen as strong, but as weak, not because you lack value, but because you have not shown others how to value you. The world does not respect an empty well, a tired giver, a man lost in the mirrors of opinion, or a lion who allows itself to be mocked. So, what is the answer? It is balance. True wisdom is not about giving endlessly, it is about giving wisely. It is not about forgiving blindly, it is about forgiving with awareness. It is not about seeking approval, it is about standing firm in your truth. It is not about enduring all things, it is about knowing when to walk away. This is not selfishness, this is not cruelty, this is self-respect. So walk wisely, give wisely, love wisely. And above all, respect yourself. Only then will the world respect you in return. Thank you for walking this path of wisdom with me today. The greatest journey is not the one that takes us across lands, but the one that leads us deeper into ourselves. If these teachings have resonated with you, if they have sparked reflection in your heart, I invite you to continue this journey. Subscribe to the channel so that we may walk together on the path of mindfulness, wisdom, and inner strength. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What lesson spoke to you the most? How do you practice balance in your own life? Your voice, your experiences, and your reflections are all part of this great conversation on wisdom and self-growth. Let us continue to learn, to grow, and to walk not as burdened souls, but as those who have remembered their own strength. May your days be filled with balance, peace, and self-respect. Until we meet again, see you in the next video.